Well, Thomas Castellanos helped the Florida State Seminoles surpass their 2025 win total on FanDuel of 7.5. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to be talking a little bit at the end of the show about the college football playoff finally starting to get it right with their ranking system instead of just having automatic slots placed for the teams that win their conferences, et cetera, at the top, just ranking them. We're going to discuss that at the end of the show. We're also going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff with regards to the win-loss total for not only Florida State, but the ACC. I want to dive into where I'm at with that. I've had a few changes in my opinion on it, and I want your opinions as well. And to start off, the key to it, as it leads into the FanDuel total of 7.5 for Florida State, Thomas Castellanos, the new quarterback for the Florida State Seminoles by way of UCF when he played with Gus Malzahn and then Boston College the last two seasons. How does he factor in? How impactful will he be? And I even have some over-unders that I would like Florida State fans to answer questions on. So let's dive in there. Got 8 questions. There's some over-unders. There's some subjectivity. But it's just fun. This is the offseason. Florida State's out of spring ball. Let's talk about the big picture for what Florida State could or could not do this year. You tell me. I'm going to give my takes as well. First question, over under for Thomas Castellanos as a Florida State Seminole. 2,500 yards passing this year. Now, for those of you that need a refresher, remember, Gus Malzahn likes to run the ball downhill and take a lot of deep shots in the passing game and then mix in screens, reverses, and a lot of misdirection. He wants chunk yardage plays, and he wants a mobile quarterback. He has the right pieces for that in Tallahassee this year. Got a big receiver outside. He's got Squirrel White, somebody who's a very proven player from the Southeastern Conference, as his time at Tennessee has proven. And he's also got a bevy of running backs, especially with Gavin Sawchuk, now a part of the Florida State football program. But that doesn't mean that you're going to just throw it everywhere. Maybe Florida State's run game is good enough. They don't have to. I think 2,500, it's a pretty normal number. I don't think a senior in college that has the talent that Castellanos has should be all that concerned about 2,500. But here's the other caveat here now. Florida State might grind out some games when they get a lead, even when they could throw, and let Thomas run the ball. So the 2,500 is a little harder if you really look into it from a big picture perspective. Second question, same number basically, over under, but 25 just touchdowns, not 2,500 yards. Does he throw 25 touchdown passes? This one could be considered more difficult because in the red zone, Castellanos has a cannon. You can use a lot of misdirection and bootleg to get the running back in the flat or the tight end. You got Landon Thomas, who could lead the team this year in touchdown receptions. That would not surprise me. Do they run the ball consistently inside the 10, or do they mix in the passing game quite a bit as well? This is a difficult projection for me. For the first one, I'm going to go over 2,500 yards passing, but I'm going to go under 25 touchdown passes. I think Gus will stick with the running game. A lot of deep shots to get the ball down the field, but he likes to pound it in and use RPO action with the quarterback being a main threat to run the football inside the 10. At least that's his history. Now, he's had some really gifted quarterbacks to do it, and Thomas Castellanos fits that bill. But I'm going, again, over 2,500 yards passing and under 25 touchdown passes. Third question. For Castellanos specifically, will he or will he not surpass 10 rushing touchdowns? To me, I think this one is a yes, because I think inside the red zone, he will be a nightmare for most defenses. Florida State will be one of the more improved offenses in college football and maybe one of the top 2 or 3 in the league. if the offensive line gels. That's a humongous question. If they finished number 8 in the league, would it shock me? No. If they finished number 2, would it shock me? Again, no. Big question mark. Florida State could be in a lot of different spots, but it's asking a whole bunch for a bunch of guys that didn't know each other prior to this spring to gel up front. And then Thomas, Deuce Robinson, Squirrel, all these different players to come in to work with Landon and the guys they brought in last year that was the really good freshman receiver group. All those players have to work together. So I think the easier way to do it is to allow the run blocking to take care of things and for Castellanos to tote the football inside the 5 especially and get that extra blocker, use a little RPO. And, of course, there's always the ad-lib play for Thomas Castellanos because he is a tremendous athlete overall and a football player. Number 4, over/under 2. The number is 2. How many times will Thomas Castellanos lead Florida State to a fourth quarter comeback? I'm going with 2. Now, just as a reminder on their schedule, and I'm going to dive into the schedule a little bit more, Miami, at Clemson, Bama is at home, at Florida, at NC State. There are plenty of chances just in those games. Those are 5 quality opponents. They'll have some others as well. Will Florida State have more than 2 games that Thomas Castellanos leads the Noles back in the fourth quarter? I'm going to go under because they're just hard to predict who's going to be ahead, but I could see that. I think Florida State's going to be in a ton of close games. They'll be in 3 or 4 that are going to go down to the wire, but they might be leading going into the fourth quarter and have to hold off a team. So that's the other way to look at that. Number 5, is Thomas Castellanos at the end of this season, would you consider him at minimum one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the Atlantic Coast Conference? Carson Beck might be pretty good at Miami. That's plausible. Duke got the kid Mensah, I believe his name is, from Tulane, but he's coming from G5. Do we really know? Not really. Georgia Tech's quarterback's really talented, but he's always running the ball like Castellanos, and he was beat up a lot last year. Not sure, maybe. Syracuse probably going to start Steve Angeli, I think, the former Notre Dame quarterback, but he's barely played. I think there's a pretty good chance. I'm going to go yes, and I actually think he'll end up in the top 3. Just my projection, but I'm saying Thomas Castellanos ends up in the top 3. Drones at Virginia Tech might be my guy if I had to pick. Carson Beck, maybe. Miller Moss, maybe. At Louisville, they're all in that range, but I think Thomas Castellanos has a big chip on his shoulder, and that's also important. When athletes are motivated, look out. Number 6 is maybe the most important question here. Will TC, Thomas Castellanos, play in all 12 games, start all 12 games, and finish all 12 games? I'm going no, because he's going to get banged up at least a little bit. So let's put a little caveat question there. Will he at least start all 12 games? What do you think on that? He's going to run the ball probably 100 times, give or take, this year, counting the scrambles. A lot of them he's not going to take a hit, but it's still a rushing attempt. I'm going to say no. There'll be at least one game he doesn't start. I don't think he'll get beat up much because they'll protect him, and they won't call a lot of his number unless it's 3rd down, 4th down, or red zone. But Castellanos will tote the football quite a bit outside the pocket. As a senior, Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, and the rest of the Florida State coaching staff, they have to count on Thomas Castellanos to be very smart, be a cerebral player. Don't go out and take extra hits. Get down. Be smart about it. If you do that, you've got a better chance to be successful. Now, how does he handle the hype in the Alabama game? Let's start with game 1 here as a point. If it's really good, just speaking out loud, do you think they're going to be able to take that if they play well, win, lose, or draw, however it ends up, and use that as momentum? You're going to go where your quarterback and your leader goes. Castellanos has been a leader. He's been discussed that way by Norvell and other people around the Florida State program. Does he handle the hype well? I think he will. I know Thomas from his time in recruiting and at UCF when I was covering the Knights. I think he will. I'm not saying that means they're going to beat Bama. I'm still picking Bama to win that game until otherwise proven. I think FanDuel has 11 or 12-point spread off the top of my head, somewhere in that vicinity. So Florida State's an underdog at home, a big underdog. But I think he will use that, again, just like in general, as a chip on his shoulder, And he'll play pretty well, and he'll handle his business leading up to it with media, with the coaches, with the other players, the student body, everything. And that's important. For Florida State to get back on track, I think he will. What's your take on it? I'd love to see your comments down below. Finally, my 8th question. Will Thomas Castellanos surpass 65% completion rate? As another reminder, Gus likes to throw a lot of screens. Squirrel White will probably have the highest completion percentage rate among targets on the receiving group because he's a veteran. He's really fast. He's really shifty. And he's had a lot of those plays before when he played for the Vols. But that doesn't mean automatically it's going to be 65%. Because the other side of Malzahn's offense, he wants to throw vertically, 20-plus yard passes down the field before the football would reach the wide receiver, tight end, or running back. It's debatable. When we come back, we're going to talk about Florida State's win total. It's 7.5, and based on the information that I just went through with Thomas Castellanos, I hope that's a helpful barometer for you. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the win total for the Florida State Seminoles. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off draws closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's an example. While you can save money on NBA playoff tickets, you can also go to a comedy show, go to the theater with your friends, or maybe you want to go and check out the opera. This is an opportunity with Gametime to save 60% off no matter what you're looking for. The all-in pricing also means that you don't have to worry about stressing about the price changing after you get to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What will Florida State's 2025 over-under be for you? Let's start with that before I go into FanDuel. Right now, how many games do you think the Noles should be put at as the barometer? It's out there already. Florida State is at 7.5 for FanDuel. But what do you think it should be? I'd like to hear your comments on that before we go into this any further. I think they did a pretty good job personally, FanDuel. That's about right. And I want to go over some of the key games. But it doesn't mean that you look at it the same. I'm just curious. So here are my questions for those that are curious about FanDuel and whether they should or shouldn't bet Florida State over under at 7.5. Number one, we've talked about Castellanos. I just went through a whole segment on that. But my biggest question marks are still the ones that I think a lot of you have as well. The offensive line's top of the board. 100%. You got some really good transfers. Florida State spent some money. They did their evaluations. They found fits at tackle and guard. That's fantastic news. The problem is still the following. Offensive line, it has to be 5 guys playing as one. That's not easy. Will it happen? And if the last 2 seasons are any type of a measurement, injuries will be a hindrance. Florida State has found itself in a bevy of difficult situations because the offensive line just always seems to be in disarray with one guy or another out, if not 2, if not 3, if not 4. It's been insane. Surely this will be, in year 3 of this, the year that Florida State has the luck on its side. But if they're not, Florida State is very inexperienced behind the majority of these transfers, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe by midseason, as I talked about not too long ago here on Locked on Seminoles, some of these freshmen and redshirt freshmen, plus like Lucas Simmons, they've got to break into the lineup in some capacity. Maybe they beat out one of these guys. Who knows? Maybe they get a chance to play because somebody got hurt and they keep their job. Who knows? But that's still a very big projection to make. And if it doesn't go well, it will be hard to make the 7.5 win total. So the second thing that I want to talk about is the one that surprises me. I thought DB was probably about as secure a position other than maybe running back. Those were the 2 going into spring I felt the best about. But Florida State went out and got Jeremiah Wilson in the portal. And they went out and got Gavin Sawchuk in the portal as well, a DB, specifically a corner, and a running back. So they had a different projection than I did, and that's why you go through spring ball. We'll see where Florida State is at, but this fall, the Noles need to be consistent at the spots. They got some depth. Right now, I'm not sure what's going on. Safety, we didn't hear great things necessarily, but it wasn't bad, and they're going to use a different defense. Does that impact your thought on 7.5 wins? They're going to use it differently. Like there's not going to be as much cover one. There'll be more safeties on the field in terms of how they line up and total volume sometimes, because Florida State might rotate to a nickel that's a safety sometimes. It's a different mentality. How does that impact you? For me, it's concerning because anytime there is a new defensive install, even though Coach White's very, very good, and he brought in very good coaches like Cooper, that's fine, but you still have to get the guys to buy in and they have to learn the scheme on the fly. And by the way, as I've noted many times on this show, Alabama's game one. There is no introduction. If you're not ready, you will be exposed in game number one. Just something to think about there as well. My third part with regards to Florida State and their win total is just confidence. Forget position. Forget the coach. Forget what happened with the assistants coming in like Malzahn, Coach Herb Hand, etc. What is the expectation amongst the players? What is their confidence? After spring, it was a little iffy. It was a little iffy, to say the least. But Elliott even said it was really bad from what he'd heard before Florida State. He recently said that on the Cover 3 podcast. That doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. Bud has far more contacts than I do at Florida State, I can assure you. But with all the new additions, I'm not surprised there's some questions. And in college football history, not just Florida State's, there are many times there were guys didn't come out of spring that were the leaders in the clubhouse at any spot. There have been guys that have been third string end up being a really good quarterback. College football is unique. That's why it's the greatest sport on earth. The unpredictability of the coaching moves, the roster moves, players going up and down, players getting in trouble, players rising to the occasion. It is random. So I don't know how much I should put into what Bud said or anybody else as the end-all be-all, but you do have to take at least part of that with a grain of salt, because if you just completely dismiss what Bud said or anybody else, because like FanDuel doesn't miss on these very often by much, they got them at 7.5. Do you think they're going to make it with all the things that have been said about Florida State this spring? The confidence, what happened, did the players believe, all of that? Maybe. One final point before we move on, and I'm going to talk some ACC win totals. I think some of this is hilarious, by the way, Miami in particular, but we'll get into that just a moment. Florida State has been known historically as a fast break offense and a defense that really gets after it. For them to win more than 7.5 games, which is more likely, the defense steps forward and really plays great in critical moments, meaning a 3-point game. I talked about that earlier in the show. Like, does Castellanos lead the Noles to at least or surpass 2 fourth-quarter comebacks? I think he'll get one, and I just think there'll be in a ton of close fourth-quarter games, but I don't know if he'll lead them to more than one. It's a pretty hard stat to win because a lot of things have to be in play for you to even have that chance, really. But can the defense maybe do that? Or does maybe another offensive player, maybe it's Sawchuk, maybe it's Deuce Robinson, maybe they're the real reason they surpass it? Who knows? So is it going to be the defense or the offense that is the critical point for Florida State really taking a step forward this year? I think it will be the defense, because defense is easier to install overall. Offense has so much to do with chemistry, and they still have a very young wide receiver group beyond a couple of key starters. So we'll see. And then Landon Thomas is your best tight end. He's a sophomore as well. Those are question marks. Florida State might figure that out or they might not, but we'll see. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the ACC win totals and then just make a few comments on the college football playoff. Them getting it right on how it's seeded is very important. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Max, Paramount Plus, Disney, anything you can imagine, you can get on a Fire Stick. I use mine all the time, and I love to use it for just about anything, especially YouTube. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube, third generation. The ACC win totals are pretty funny. Hilarious might be a better word. I'm just going to go through these in the order from highest down to getting towards the bottom. And I'm going to list off some of the games that I think are critical for these teams. And we'll talk about Florida State a little bit as well. But I like the one that I want to get to that surprise. Virginia's at 6.5. Does anybody really trust Virginia? I want to get to that in a little bit. I didn't even write down the teams they're playing, and I'll comment why in a minute. But the ACC is a very difficult league to predict. Now, Big 12 is the hardest, but some of these win totals make me a little nervous. And I'm not a betting guy, but still. 9.5 for Clemson. You over or under on 9.5 for the Clemson Tigers. Here are a couple of the key games that they have this year. They've got, obviously, Florida State's going to go there. They've got Louisville on the road. They've got South Carolina on the road. They got North Carolina on the road. And they opened the season with LSU. That's in Death Valley, but the one in South Carolina. So Clemson, 9.5. I would say over. I think they're going to win 10. But South Carolina, Louisville on the road, LSU at home, those are all possibilities for loss. But I don't think they're going to lose all of them. And no, I don't think Florida State's going to win in Death Valley 2 times in a row. But I thought Clemson might be at 10. I really did. And they went under that number. It'll be interesting. Maybe the folks out in Vegas think that LSU is going to win that game. Possibly. That's an interesting one. Again, Florida State, I got 7.5 key games. Miami at Clemson. Bama's at home. At Florida. At NC State. Those are some of the major ones. Florida State's schedule is a little bit more backloaded. I think their depth could hurt them. Playing a little more difficult to schedule towards the middle of the year would have been more beneficial. Teams without a lot of depth that haven't hit their recruiting mark, Florida State has not, tend to struggle in November. That's a historical college football trend. I'm concerned about Florida State in the game that could be very critical for Florida State, either at least getting to 7 wins, if not 8 or 9, is NC State. That's on the road. That's at the end of the year, right before they play Florida. That'll be interesting. And then again, what happens with Billy Napier? They play at UF end of the year in November, but is Billy still on the hot seat? Is he fired? Is he off the hot seat? That's critical, and we have no way of knowing. Before that game's even played, that's a very big factor. Louisville is 8.5. They've got Pitt on the road, Miami on the road, Virginia Tech on the road, and SMU on the road. That's pretty rough. And one of their home games is Clemson. They also have their rivalry game against Kentucky at home. That's debatable, but again, Louisville is at 8.5, at Pitt, at Miami, at Virginia Tech, at SMU, Clemson, and Kentucky at home. It's not an easy slate. I would have to say that Louisville, I would go under. I don't like all the road games. Like Pittsburgh's a team that might bite you. SMU's tough at home. That's a rough one. Here's the other one that's a little funny to me. I thought Miami might be a little higher because they've recruited so well. They're 8.5 on FanDuel, but they do have Notre Dame to open the year. I'm thinking most people think Notre Dame is going to win that. I know I do, but they've got UF at home. They've got Florida State at home. That's, I think, 3 out of their first 5 or 6 games. They've got Louisville, they got to go to Doak Campbell. That's right. They can play at Florida State. But they got Louisville at home, Syracuse at home. They got Virginia Tech. They got Georgia Tech. At Pitt. They've got NC State at home. Like, they've just got a really consistent schedule. So I can see in a way why you would go with 8.5 for Miami. And then the other factor is, as a lot of Florida State fans like to point out on the YouTube page for Locked On Seminoles, Mario Cristobal's head coach. It's probably going to cost him at some point. Maybe he does again this year. I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't be the first time that he has messed up game management. Georgia Tech, 7.5. Haynes King's back for another year. For the Yellow Jackets, Frank Key and his squad do a good job, but they open up at Colorado playing Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. Won't be an easy game to start. They also have Clemson at home, at Duke, at NC State. They got Pitt. They've got Georgia because that's always their crossover as a rivalry in-state game. That's not an easy way to go. I'm going to go Georgia Tech. Now that they're kind of the hunted, I'm going to go 7. I think they're going to struggle in close games, and they will take a step back this year in terms of perception. They did a really good job there last year. Key and that staff did a good job, but we'll see. North Carolina, also 7.5. Bill Belichick, his girlfriend, and whatever's going on there. TCU to open the season. Interesting. At UCF is their first game in not just a road game, but like that awkward moment where like we're better than them. But UCF has made a living off of those kind of games for decades. Does UNC get tripped up there? Again, it's only 7.5, but if you lose one more game like that, you could be in trouble. They got Clemson at home. They're not going to win that. They got Duke at home. They got at NC State. Syracuse is in the Dome. I'm going to say that UNC, because their quarterback situation is iffy, I'm going to say 7 wins. Outside of these main games, they're probably going to lose to a team that they're a 10-point favorite or something. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, and that's kind of ACC football in general, but we'll see. We'll see. Also, just to finish up again, I'm not going to break down their schedule, but Virginia is at 6.5. I'm not buying Virginia over 5 wins any year until they prove it. That's just me. And to wrap up today's show, just a very simple comment about the playoff. This year will be the same format, but starting in 26, they're going to vote on it indifferently. Just the overall vote wins on what changes are made. It doesn't have to be unanimous, which it does right now from all the leagues in Notre Dame. So instead of this stupid seating they've had, they're going to go into a situation where they can vote on like whatever the ranking is at the end of the year. That's your spots. The only question I have, and I haven't heard about this, if for whatever reason there isn't a G5 team that's in that top 12, top 14, whatever it ends up being, how does that work? Do they automatically just get swatted to 12 and whoever was 12 get booted? That's the only problem. Let's hope for most of the time that the G12 or the G5 team that gets in is able to make it to 12 or better, and they're undefeated or 11-1. Because some team that goes 10-2 or something became in third in their league or something like that, the ACC, that gets booted by a G5 school, that will be chaos. And it will be a lot of really unhappy people. But otherwise, I like the ability to seed it that way because, like, no offense, but Boise State shouldn't have been that high last year, etc. Let's just seed the teams 1 through 12 the way they should be. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Please make sure that you share this podcast with other Florida State fans so I can get in front of them. Truly appreciate that in advance. And like and subscribe and comment down below. The YouTube algorithm in particular really likes comments. So any questions you have or anything, please do so. Thank you once again. We'll see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.